Once, in a kingdom where flowers bloomed in every corner, lived a king who was very old and had no children. He spent his days watching over his people from the high palace balcony, but he worried about the future. He didn't want the next ruler to be just the strongest or the richest person. He wanted someone with a heart of pure gold to lead his people with wisdom. One sunny morning, the king gathered all the children of the land. The air was filled with excitement as he held up a small pouch. "I will give a single golden seed to every child," he announced. "Go home and plant them. In 1 year's time, bring back what you have grown. Whoever brings the most beautiful flower shall inherit the throne and rule this kingdom." Among the children was a young boy named Leo. Leo wasn't the fastest or the loudest, but he loved plants and knew how to talk to the soil. As he walked home, he held his tiny seed in his palm as if it were a precious diamond. "I will grow the most beautiful flower the king has ever seen," he whispered, his heart full of hope and big dreams. The moment Leo reached home, he went to work. He picked his finest ceramic pot, the one with the prettiest patterns. He filled it with the darkest, richest soil from the edge of the forest and gently tucked the golden seed inside. He placed it carefully on a sunny windowsill and gave it just a few drops of fresh water, waiting for the magic to begin. Weeks passed, and the village was buzzing. Everywhere Leo looked, children were shouting with joy. "Look at my sprout," one girl cried. "Mine already has 2 green leaves," said another. Leo hurried home to check his windowsill, but in his pot, there was nothing but brown, silent earth. Not a single green speck was to be seen. Leo didn't give up. He was determined to make it grow. He thought, maybe it needs more sun, and moved it to the center of the garden. He thought, maybe the water is too cold, and traveled to the mountain spring to fetch a fresh jar of water. He spent hours kneeling by the pot, checking the soil with his tools, but the seed remained deep in its sleep. Spring turned to summer, and summer faded into autumn. The other children's flowers were now tall, vibrant, and strong. But Leo's pot remained empty. His friends began to laugh at him. "Leo, you're supposed to be a gardener. How can you grow nothing?" they teased. Leo didn't answer. He just sighed, As the year came to an end, the kingdom became a sea of impossible colors. Huge lilies, glowing roses, and flowers that smelled like wild honey filled every home. People began to whisper and place bets on who would be the winner. Surely, they thought, the next king or queen would be the child with the tallest, most magical sunflower in the land. Finally, the big day arrived. 1 full year had passed. Leo sat alone in his garden, staring at the pot of bare earth. He felt a heavy weight in his chest like a stone. "I cannot go to the palace," he told his mother, his voice trembling. "I have failed the king. Everyone will see that I have brought nothing but dirt." But Leo's mother knelt down and put a gentle hand on his shoulder. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Leo, you did your best. You cared for that seed every single day with love. An honest failure is much better than a beautiful lie. Take your pot to the king, stand tall, and tell him the truth. That is all anyone can ask." The road to the palace was a grand parade of blossoms. Children carried pots so heavy they needed 2 hands to hold them. As Leo walked by with his empty pot, the others snickered and whispered behind their hands. Leo's face was red, and he kept his head down, but his grip on his pot remained firm. He was going to finish what he started. The king stepped out onto the palace courtyard. He walked slowly down the long rows of children. He saw bright blues, deep purples, and flowers that sparkled in the light. But strangely, the king did not smile. In fact, he looked disappointed, almost angry, as he moved past the sea of perfect blossoms. He seemed to be looking for something he couldn't find. The king stepped out onto the palace courtyard. He walked slowly down the long rows of children. He saw bright blues, deep purples, and flowers that sparkled in the light. But strangely, the king did not smile. In fact, he looked disappointed, almost angry, as he moved past the sea of perfect blossoms. He seemed to be looking for something he couldn't find. The entire courtyard went silent. You could hear a leaf hit the ground. Suddenly, the king reached down and lifted Leo's empty pot high in the air for everyone to see. He turned to the crowd and shouted with a booming voice, "Behold, here's your new king!" The other children gasped in shock. "But his pot is empty," they cried. "Ours are beautiful. Why him?" The king looked at the crowd and smiled warmly at Leo. "The seeds I gave you a year ago were all boiled," he explained. "They were dead seeds. It was impossible for them to ever grow. When you saw nothing happening, you all replaced them with different seeds. Only Leo was brave enough and honest enough to bring back exactly what he found. Only an honest heart can rule this kingdom."